I've had all three of these ladies on with me individually, either via video or podcast format. And over time, after you talk with people enough, you start kind of seeing some common things running between all of us as humans, but especially these three folks, because they're all three professionals and they make a living off helping other people, and which I thought was very cool. But one of the things that I saw running through all three of their careers and lives and journeys was the journey of being authentic, finding their authentic selves. And so when I bring them up, we're going to hear their stories. I'll ask them some questions. You can feel free to ask questions or make comments. Get in touch with them after the video. Reach out to them individually if you think that one of them can help you with something. But and I wanted to say this real quick because I want to pull their names over. Here we go. I've got Judy Herman on, and as she is a professional, a mental health professional. She's also an author of a book called Beyond Messy Relationships. Karen McMahon is a relationship divorce coach. She's the owner of Journey Beyond Divorce. And I've got Chastity Snowden. She is a nutrition coach. She is also a former CrossFit World Games competitor and participant. And she's the owner of something called the Fearlessly Authentic Movement. Now, I want you to listen to this. In Judy's book, it's messy. And in Karen's business title, it's beyond something, right? And then in Chastity's, it's movement. And they all have this theme. I've heard them all use the word authentic, but I thought messy, beyond, which means moving past some place that you may be stuck at, and movement. I thought all three of those words were kind of very cool, and they all kind of led us to this conversation of finding our authentic selves. So now that you've heard enough about me or my little take on it, I've said this a bunch. I've cried in front of two of these ladies before, and the third one has seen my before pictures when it comes to trying to lose weight. So with all that being said, I'm very vulnerable, ladies. Take it easy on me. Here we go. They're all going to be joining us, and there we are. Hi.
Hi, Clint.
Hey,
Hello.
Clint, congratulations to be surrounded by such so much estrogen right now, right?
Listen, I'm either the dumbest or the bravest man in America right now.
You know what? You're my hero today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's make sure technically we're still sound. Everybody still hears everybody, right? We're good, because that changes. And I'll say this, if something starts happening with your internet or you realize something's going wrong, just click out, use that invite, click right back in, and we'll pull you back up in the conversation. Now, with all that being said, each of you ladies are going to tell us your abbreviated story. But before we go down that road, I think we ought to say happy birthday to Karen.
Yay. It's my birthday.
I cannot believe you made it to 35. Way to go.
Exactly. Isn't it shocking?
That is killer. I don't know. Hey, you had your kids when you were 13, but way to go.
It's okay.
Yeah. You must be from the South. I didn't say that.
Oh,
and that
shoot.
is inappropriate. I'm from the South. I can say what I want to.
That's very funny.
Okay, so let's just start up here. I feel like I'm Hollywood Squares, the old TV show.
And you have to be a certain age to know what that means.
Yeah, that's true.
We just disqualified everybody that's under the age of Karen, which is 35.
Yeah.
So let's start with here. Chastity, I've known you for a while. My dad and your dad are good friends. You're actually are from kind of where we live, where I live, Chattanooga, from Ringgold. Mm-hmm. But you don't live in Ringgold, Georgia now. You live in Boca Raton, Florida.
Yes.
So with that being said, why don't you tell everybody just quickly your journey? Kind of how did you get to Florida, and what are some little highlights along the way?
Well, I decided to move to Florida because I wasn't authentic, oddly enough. I was hiding from a lot of people and I needed to run. So I moved to Florida. Luckily, my aunt gave me a place to live. And inside of that journey, and even before that, I was struggling with a lot of different things, health-wise, mental-wise. And nutrition actually was something that catapulted me into becoming my authentic self. Struggled a lot with eating disorders over a couple decades, no big deal. But luckily, inside of moving to Florida, finding my voice, pushing past things I feared in my life, I not only changed my health, I changed my issues beating eating disorders and health issues and autoimmune disease, getting off medication for bipolar 2, and then found CrossFit, which was a game changer for me. Got to show up every single day, being real and raw and being in a lot of pain for about 5 years, and went from a bikini competitor being thin to pursuing a performance sport. And 5 years later, in 2018, I was top 20 in the world in the 35 to 40-year-old division. So luckily, the journey to becoming authentic and moving to Florida completely changed my health, my aesthetics, and the ability to perform.
What was, and anybody can jump in with this, but what was inside the name of your movement is authentic. Mm-hmm. And I know that was intentional, but when did you kind of realize that that was really what your journey was about? When did you realize I'm in search for the real me? Was that early on?
Actually, no. 2018 was when like the word authentic, and I didn't realize that's what I was doing, was like trying to find my voice and stop listening to what everyone else told me I should be and do, until 2018. My eating disorder was what I used to sedate myself in order to deal with the anxiety, depression of not being what everybody wanted me to be, or not being what I thought I should be. So letting go of that is basically how I had to be honest with myself and show up completely authentic. And the word didn't happen, and the realization didn't happen until 2018.
Oh, that's very cool. And at some point in time, I want somebody, either we might bring it up today or go back and listen to the podcast or videos. But what year did you compete in the CrossFit Games?
2018.
Okay. That's the year of the authentic thing, the light bulb went off. Mm-hmm. And was there a moment at the CrossFit Games where you came to that conclusion?
It was actually after.
Okay, because I was going with the tears in the dressing room because I think that's a cool place.
Yeah, it's a combo of that and then going to coaching in the Wake Up Warrior movement. I went to an event and I realized in that moment that I needed something different. And so that is one of the reasons I went to the next event. And then after that, proceeded to get authentic tattooed on my arm. So, those 3 events definitely solidified it.
That is such an incredible, thank you for sharing that. What an amazing journey. And, when you're dealing with those mental health issues, the struggle is so heavy. And even the voices in your head, not just the people outside, but then what the voices in your head are saying. And so just kudos. That's just incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. Those voices in my head, they scream sometimes. I wish they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll talk a little bit about that, because I think sometimes we look at people like, if somebody would look at your business cards, all 3 of y'all, you've got it together. You figured it out. You've arrived at the destination. Yeah, you're good to go. But we don't understand that humans all have voices, all have these screaming voices in our head. And Karen, tell us a little bit how you got to where you're at, and let us pick your life apart publicly. This is fun.
Yay.
Happy birthday. Go.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think that my darkest moments were when both my children were toddlers, and I realized how unhappy I was and how what a rageaholic I had become. And it was the beginning of a journey to figure out what was going on. And I think with so many of us, the journey begins with blaming circumstances and personalities outside of ourselves. And then I began to do that work that had me realize, even as a child, I was a straight A student. I was an all-star athlete. Like, I was always doing things to try to gain people's acceptance, love, friendship. And for me, the journey to authenticity was really about, and like chastity, it wasn't like I was like, let me find my authentic self. That's not what happened at all. It was just, let me get out of this pain. And what I found was the journey to getting out of the pain was to notice, acknowledge. For me, the 3 things were my codependence, my perfectionism, and my people pleasing, because all of those behaviors are created to to have these masks to be whoever people want us to be. And I was a chameleon. And even while my personal relationship was a mess, I was always really good professionally. So I always had this outside presentation, but what was going on beneath the surface wasn't so pretty. And over the course of getting divorced and then going into coaching and then beginning to help other people, and even still today, it's like I get to coach people every day, and there's always something in there for me. There's something where I'll hang up the phone and I'll go, that was for me too. And it's just, you know, I have clients who say, like, when do I finally arrive? And, you know, my answer is when you're 6 feet under. You know, like, this is a lifetime journey to figure out, who have I been created to be and what have I been created to do in this world? And when you step into that flow, and I'll call it God's flow for you, God's will for you, there's nothing more incredible. And today I can say I love myself and I'm imperfect. And
don't you wish, though, this whole thing came with a starter's gun, like we knew? Okay, you're 16. Go now. Go discover. Oh, this is when the journey starts. Great. Yeah. We don't come with it doesn't come with a rule book.
But you know what I think is cool? Like, for the people I work with, one of the things I always say to them is, what you learn through coaching, pour into your children. My children at 21 and 24 are so much wiser and more emotionally intelligent and aware of themselves than I was in my mid-40s. And that's something that we can do as parents.
Yeah, I love my kid. I love my kids, all of them. And sometimes it scares me because I'll hear my son, who's 21, and if there's ever been a carbon copy of a human being, it's my son. He'll say stuff and I'll go, no, absolutely not. He'll go, why not? I go, because I did that. And he's like, well, you made it, but I'm dadgummit. Okay. I know. Yeah, it's part of it. And Judy, I know, you know, you're not only have you still, like all of us, still on the journey, but it's affected your personal life, and the journey of being authentic's also affected the career, how it's kind of changed over the last few years. So how did you get where you're at?
Yes, I do want to make note of, you know what, we see the outside, we see the front end of all of our lives. And so to know that, okay, our lives are still messy in this area. We need to, you know, move. I love it that we're all like moving beyond moving. Moving is huge. And we all have messes. And those messes, in my opinion, are invitations to this authentic journey. So in a nutshell, my story is that I did have a crisis at the age of 31. And I looked and I saw that, oh my gosh, my life isn't real. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. I woke up, I had these 2 little girls and I had this marriage, and I thought, I don't belong here. The reality was I was living my life trying to forget a shameful place in my adolescence. And that was maybe my first awakening, so to speak, about I was not living my true life. Well, I have spent all of my life, all of my adult life, trying to make relationships work. I was married for 30 years. And again, trying to fit into a box, a theological box. They come from a very conservative Christian upbringing, went to a very conservative Christian school, which I think, Chaz, you and I graduated maybe from the same institution. But anyway, trying to do this traditional wife submissive, man goes out to work, it just didn't work for me. And then so the big D happened in my life, the divorce. I then became a therapist, specializing in relationships, specializing in mental health. I did remarry, and I had a second husband who has had bipolar disorder, not bipolar 1, but not bipolar 2, which is a lesser form, bipolar 1. Yet I was drawn because he took good care of himself. You know, he in my opinion, he was like his authentic self. He wasn't afraid to admit that he has it, that he cares for himself. He goes to groups, and that's what drew me, his authentic self. Well, the catalyst for me writing my book, Beyond Messy Relationships, the catalyst was me not really being prepared or knowing how severe the illness was and is. He had had years of wellness, 13 or so years, and it showed up in the marriage. 4.5 years into the marriage, I was in my counseling office counseling folks, and in between sessions I'd get a call from the psychiatrist and find out, okay, my husband, this is going to be a hard case, and he was inpatient. And that was pretty much the catalyst for me writing my book. There's more to the story, and it is a memoir, but it's also therapy at the beginning of each of the chapters.
Well, so I've written down, and I don't know if any of y'all write stuff down as you're having these conversations. I've got I've got about 14 words that each of you have said. And then I have my list of questions that I promised we would ask. And now I'm torn because I want to deliver, but y'all said some really good stuff. And I'll give my input throughout this conversation because, you know, I have no degrees. I've not studied at all. I'm just a human being that's been through pain and tried to figure it out. And I think that qualifies me to have a little bit of an opinion on it. But the word being vulnerable, you know, I'll be the one guy representative. There's a lot of guys that hate that word. They don't admit it. They say other things. I'm not vulnerable. I'm just willing to admit when I'm wrong, or I'll just rub some dirt on it. The problem with it is, if I can't be vulnerable with myself first, I can never have a conversation on Facebook where my kids may be able to take something from it, or clients can take something from it. And so the fact that each of you are vulnerable enough to share some stories, I think, is not only developing trust, but it's a big deal for you. I think these kind of conversations are important for you and for me as it is for anybody else that will hear this.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you agree? Having these things, it's important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are modeling what, and I do want to make mention, my clients that I have, so I've been in private practice since, I guess, 2006 is when I got licensed. That over the years, and it was a second career. My first career was raising 4 human beings and, being a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling and all of that. But my clients over the years have shown me some tremendous courage. And I knew as their therapist, I need to continue my journey. We never just arrive, right? And I need to have the same kind of courage that they have shown me. Plus, they've given me a lot of insight. Oh, my story is not just mine alone. This is a universal issue we're dealing with. It comes in different flavors, but it's a universal issue that we deal with. And the invitation is to grow beyond where you are at a certain stage of life when your brain's not even totally online until your mid-20s. And it's increasing in our awareness and being intentional and taking risks of growth, which there you have my acronym of breathing in fresh air.
Love it.
Well, I want to say this too. This is odd sometimes on video. If one of you have a question, want to say something, you don't have to put your hand up, but just make some sort of like touch your face or wave, jump in. Because I don't want it to be where it's each of you have said some stuff. Chesty, you kind of mask stuff with food. Mm-hmm. And Karen, you said the word rageaholic and careers. And then Judy, you got busy raising kids and then in relationships. And I wrote down, we said the word mask. I found that each person, in order to avoid the journey, the start of the journey, it's not like we're not on the journey anyway. The clock's running, right? We just become a passenger instead of, trying to be a driver of it. Right. But we all find something to hide in, right? Mm. And I think whether it's relationships or food, that's what we kind of gravitate to and cling to. Would you all three not agree with that?
Yes.
I agree. I think that we, for each of us, based on how we're raised, it's going to be something different. But I want to go back to that word vulnerability too, because, I talk to clients, so they're getting divorced, and it's like you'd be so much quicker to take your clothes off in front of someone than you would to share your heart. Mm-hmm. And vulnerability is such a key aspect of authenticity. Brene Brown has one of the most watched TED Talks out there on vulnerability. I highly recommend people look it up. And one of the things she says is if vulnerability allows you to both experience the deepest pain and the greatest joy. And if you're not vulnerable, then you're tamping down both. Yeah, you might keep yourself from pain, but you're also keeping yourself equally from those higher levels of joy. And so in becoming vulnerable, and I think each of our stories speak to that, you walk through the fire of refinement, you go through the pain, but then you get to enjoy, the rainbow of beautiful things in life so much more. And so I think it's a key part. And for those who protect ourselves, it's almost like we're living in the gray, like we don't get to enjoy all the vibrant colors.
Chas, a lot of times I hate to say this, but when people hide behind their careers and relationships, how many times have you heard, I lost myself to the other person in a relationship, or I've lost myself to my career, or I've lost myself to raising kids, whatever. We forget that food is the number, in my opinion, that is one of the places people lose and hide themselves the most, coming from the guy that will eat a dozen, Krispy Kremes on a day where he's been kind of rough. But that it's the same thing for you, whether it's a relationship or food.
Yeah, I definitely think people hide with food. They hide who they are. That is the choice form of sedation, in my opinion, because it's the socially acceptable one. It's the one you can hide in that everybody approves of. People don't approve of alcohol or horrible other things that you're doing to yourself. But I think it's one of the ways to keep you from being vulnerable, because you are doing something to basically sedate your life, and you never can be completely you, because you're constantly thinking about the food or when you're going to eat again or how you're going to sedate with it.
That's
the way it was with me.
Did you know, all three of you, and Chas, I'll start with you, but did you know you were hiding? Did you know that you were avoiding stuff in the middle of the whatever apex of pain before you had the light bulb moment? Did you know that you were actually running from something, or was that just the life you had? This is just who I am.
When I first started with food, I was so young. I was like 12 or 13. I didn't know then, but as early as like 16, I knew I was hiding from things and using it to not be myself, or to have a reason to not engage with society, because I didn't know who I was, and I was afraid I wouldn't be accepted as I was.
Karen, did you realize in the middle of it that you were running and hiding?
I did not. It was really the pain of my divorce. It's like when I got hit over the head with a bat, that's when I started looking at my life differently. And so I would say, and I tell all my clients this, I was sleepwalking. I was the walking unconscious. I was really always awesome in my career and crappy in my relationships. And I always thought it was about him. I just had a bad picker. And the truth was it went much deeper than my picker.
Well, and it's not just one thing. I mean, I hate to say this. I've got a bunch of stuff I hide behind. I put a bunch of curtains in front of me. I'll hide behind food. I'll hide behind social media. You'll hide behind your career. I try to put as many things between me and, because here's the thing. A lot of people, and Judy, you're the mental health professional that's got you've got the acronyms beside your name. And all of us, all you do, but the curtains, my food, my career, my being a dad, my social media, my persona, blah, that's really not to protect me from pulling it back and seeing other people. I don't want to pull it back and see me. Mm-hmm. That's tough.
You're exactly right. I was actually going to bring that up, Clint. You're a step ahead of me, because anything can be something that you hide behind. And I think, Karen, you're spot on, I believe, is that we don't know what we don't know, right? We are doing this and we don't even have a clue that we are, until we come to a place in our lives that is painful. Yes. So as human beings, we are drawn, and that's part of the limbic system of the brain, where we go toward pleasure and away from pain. Well, it's the pain that gets our attention. So whatever we're going through in our lives that's painful is an opportunity to raise our level of awareness. I believe every one of us here and all of us there, we are like unaware of some things that we just don't even know we're unaware about.
Right.
And our journey throughout life is to increase our awareness. There we go back to the taking in deep breaths of air. So if you're an entrepreneur and you work a lot, you're a high achiever, well, likely you're working, and busyness, as probably for all of us, has kept us from our awareness of, oh, wait a minute, I need to get back in this present moment. Mindfulness practice is a really good practice. When you're busy and you're not living in this moment, you're either living in the future, you're trying to live in the past, you're missing out on your life. And that's part of the authentic journey.
And a lot of people that watch this, and I've been down this road, and I know you three have as well. It's easy to feel like you're on an island too. It's easy to feel like everybody else is so them. They are who they are, and I am so not me. And I start in my brain, and I've talked about all three of you with this, the inner voice. And we said at the beginning, Chas, you said the voices would, they scream sometimes. But I'm not kidding. It's really easy. And I think this lack of the not being on the journey to find out who you really are, I think is one of the main things that leads to depression in my world, because it is so easy to start realizing I'm a liar to myself and I'm by myself. No one else can share this journey. Chastity, nobody else can walk down what you do. Neither can Karen for you or Judy or Clint. And so when we know we're alone and we're not being true to ourselves, it's a very sad place. And sometimes I want to make sure people understand they're not alone.
Mm-hmm. And if I could jump in, I think that
when I have three people that help people for a living, and I say that, and all three of them go, "Damn it, go Karen, go."
Yeah. So I think that when I was going through my divorce, I was in a 12-step program, and now we run groups. We run virtual groups, and we just actually started one last night, and the feedback was how comforting it was to just be on a coaching call with other people and realize that your issues are not just yours. We all share them, a different color, a different flavor. And one of the things I learned in 12-step programs is we isolate. So the quickest way to know something is wrong with a client, with one of my kids, is when all of a sudden they disappear and they isolate. And because that's that, I feel so bad about myself. I'm putting up everything I can. I'm shutting everything down and I'm isolating. And then I get to live with that nasty lying voice in my head beating me up. And I feel worse and worse and worse until I boldly connect. And then once you connect, you've opened that door, that path to what's going to be more healing.
Chastity, you smiled pretty big when she said that. Is there something you wanted to say, or were you just because I know you're big on how people show up to your groups, and so.
Well, it's interesting inside of relationships or whatever sedation mechanism you're using or groups. It's like the solo game kills, and then these groups that people form is how people move forward faster it's like you have to be around other people in order to be yourself, which is interesting. Because I mean, like iron sharpens iron, definitely. And like people in a group can make you not only feel alone, but they'll shine a mirror on what you actually are and who you actually are so that you can become who you need to be or who you want to be.
Well, wasn't that one of the things that drew you to CrossFit was the community?
Yes. And the lack of mirrors. But yeah, the CrossFit community in the group was a game changer. Like the people, never feel alone. Like, and it's, even though it's fitness, it's all about being in pain together. Like the workout is horrible and you're in so much pain, just like sometimes we are in life. But if you can look over and somebody else is in pain, then you can keep going because they're in pain too. So you got to keep going too. Like, and learning from that and applying it to a nutrition coaching company and creating groups where people, like she said, the ones that are struggling those are the ones that are like disappear. And a lot of times they don't reach out. It takes a coach to reach out to them in order to bring them back in. Yeah. But the solo game kills every time. And I tell my clients that, but as soon as they show up inside the group, they're no longer alone and they feel like other people are struggling too. So it's okay to struggle and show up and just be real and raw.
Well, and in the CrossFit world too, and I know because I've got a lot of friends in CrossFit, you can be in a workout and somebody can be on their third class ever of CrossFit, and somebody can be a world-class competitor, and you're all kind of accepted at wherever you're at in life, which is that's a great thing in life. If you surround yourself with people who don't accept you, and I think, Karen, you said it, if you're a people pleaser and you surround yourself with the wrong people, well, then you're going to get the wrong outcomes.
Amen.
I'm preaching a little bit.
I want to tag along with what Chaz said, because what you said was really important. I believe relationships are really mirrors to you. And neurologically speaking, we have what you call mirror neurons in our brains. So to show up and to grow into your authentic self, yes, you do need people in your life, relationships. One of the things I've noticed throughout the years in my counseling office, those that struggle with depression and anxiety, marital problems, a huge common denominator that keeps them stuck is isolation. And so what's so very important, groups are phenomenal. And I've gotten actually some pushback on some 3 things that I believe about relationships and I wrote this in my book, that all relationships, they go through seasons of messiness. And then those divine invitations come from those in-between spaces in our relationships and our messes. But we cannot grow our authentic selves apart from significant relationships in our lives. So when it comes to who you're living with and that conflict and the messes that come, this is a time to examine your own heart and soul. What does my spouse, as difficult as who they are, or as maybe, as flawed as they are in their family of origins or whatever their issues are, it's still an opportunity to see some things. The mirror neurons, what do they see that we cannot see ourselves? See, the reality is we're all on the screen. We cannot see our own faces. But if we were in the same room, you would be able to see me in such a way that I can't see me.
Well, that just means my dog needs therapy then, because I'm his roommate, and if he's a reflection of my inner self, then I've got a 13-year-old dog. It was a reflection. I don't know if that's good or bad. Both our hips hurt. I know that. His hips hurt. My hips hurt. Hey, let's do this. How do you, and I don't care which one of you want to take this off, and we'll jump off with some actually scripted questions in the next 10 minutes. Chassie, how do you stay on the journey? I mean, I know we've talked about surrounding it with the people, but are there habits? Are there certain mantras? Are there words? Are there moments that you put out quarterly? How do you make sure you're staying on the journey?
The biggest thing for me is to set a target or a goal. So if I'm constantly pursuing something versus swimming in circles, whether it's a goal inside of finances, faith, love, aesthetics, typically I set goals in all areas of life, and moving toward that means I'm going to run into things that make me become more myself, or I have to face fears and move through them, and that sucks. So setting a target means I'm going forward, because you can't get to it just looking at it from afar. You have to actually move toward it. So you have to change.
Karen, do you have certain things that, and real quick, Karen, Chassie, I want to come back, and if I'm putting you on the spot, it's okay.
Okay.
You've been writing stuff down. So either you're making a grocery list, which is fine, because I know you're big on buying your food, or there's things that you're wanting to say, and you feel free to jump in at any time. But if you're making a grocery list, I just need to know exactly what you're getting so I can make sure you're tracking your macros correctly.
To be honest, one of the ways and habits I have in order to continue on the journey is surround myself with people that I respect and push me to be better. So I'm actually writing down notes of things they're saying that I want to remember for myself.
That's awesome. Okay.
So
avocados,
yeah,
grapes, no donuts. Karen, what do you have stuff in place to make sure, because we all have these lessons we've learned from the past, and if we're smart, we put the bumpers up on the bowling alley so we can kind of stay in there.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is to always reflect back. And so my statement that I share with all of my clients is every upset is a setup. And so anytime I'm triggered, anytime I struggle, rather than getting annoyed with my kid or getting frustrated with whatever, it's that opportunity for me to say, okay, what's going on? what needs healing, what needs refining. And so that's a big thing, because life is filled with both big and small struggles. And it's just so easy to look outward when all the gifts and treasures are looking inward. And then my word is a little different than Chas's, setting intentions. So how do I, like right now, especially after COVID, I'm not feeling great about my physical self. And so, and today's my birthday. So what do I want to do between 59 and 60, so that when I celebrate my 60th birthday, I'm like at the top of my game? And what does that mean in terms of what I want to read? Like, what do I want to do? Do I want to watch less TV? I want to socialize more, although I don't know that that's going to be an option. And so setting, and not like a New Year's resolution, but rather setting an intention. And Chas, what you said is so perfect. It's like you can say intellectually, physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationship wise, and look. And so I try to do that every year around my birthday, is say, where have I come in the past year? And what do I want to accomplish in the next year? And that really is a nice North Star for me. And I by no means do it perfectly, but it's the intention, and then celebrating what I did accomplish instead of beating myself up for what I didn't accomplish.
All right, Judy, this is where Chastity and Karen and me get to write more stuff down.
Well, Chastity and Karen are so spot on, and so aren't you, Clint. I want to tell you, I just want to encourage you, because I love what you two are saying, or all three of you are saying. So yeah, be a goal oriented, and then like, this is so true. Like, hanging out with people who are a step ahead of you, right? In a mastermind group or whatever, taking risks of growth. Taking time to set intentions, Karen, and again, this goes back to my acronym, breathing in fresh air, which is all throughout my book, Beyond Messy Relationships. So this is our human journey. And if we do not make space, I love it how you do this, Karen, on your birthday. I do something similar too. I'll go out like on an individual retreat around my birthday, and then also at seasons every quarter. But taking the time, not to be so busy, but taking the time to reflect. Actually, to take time to reflect every single day. Have a system in which you are just being intentional about thankfulness and gratitude. It will enrich your life big time and get you beyond the messes. But so what I do with, goodness, I think I went off of your question. Was I supposed to say what I do?
You can, but it doesn't matter. I mean,
yeah, but I do like meditations, just taking time to breathe. Let's not be so avoidant of boredom. We need to even make space in our lives to be bored. That's good mental health to do that.
Well, the reason I was asking that kind of question to all three of you was, if you're hearing this, just like in CrossFit, Chastity, people, and you too, Karen, but people can come to you at different stages of mental health, physical health, relationship health. And sometimes if you're stuck in a place, hearing some of this stuff is great, but if I don't have something I can take away from it that I can put into place, I can't do 9 things. And Chastity, I know you believe this too. We focus on one habit. This week, it's just water. And Karen, you used to say the same thing to me, and so did you, Judy. Once I stopped crying in front of both of you, you were really good at telling me, to do one thing. But I want to make sure that people understand, if they're listening to this, they can go, okay, I want to be authentic. I want to start being authentic. I want to figure out who I am. And here's the thing. That doesn't mean you have to get a divorce. It doesn't mean you have to give up stuff. You don't know what you need to start doing until you can first realize, I need to figure out who I am. And in Clint's opinion, the hardest thing to do when you say, okay, I'm starting, is you better get ready to face the monster that is going to tell you you're not worthy to start the journey. And that was my next question, is how hard was it giving yourself grace and mercy? Because before you can be authentic with Clint and everybody else, you got to be authentic with yourself. Was grace and mercy hard for each of you to give yourself? And is that one of those things you arrive at, or is that continual too? And then if y'all can give me about 5 more minutes, because this has been pretty cool. So the grace and mercy part of it.
I'll jump in. I would beat myself up with a bat in the beginning. So I was I was so hard on myself, and learning. I think it was a therapist who said to me, and I share this with my clients all the time, would you treat your children that way if they made a mistake? Would you say that to them if they made a mistake? And the reparenting myself to start treating myself with the same compassion and kindness and gentleness that I raised my children with. And that, for me, was the game changer, was to really become kind and merciful toward myself.
Chastity ran to get something. I know. Judy?
Yeah.
Grace and mercy.
Grace and mercy. Yes, it's been cultivated, I think, for me through hearing the stories of my clients and considering that sacred space and just the courage that it took. And yes, that's like a huge challenge. It wasn't a counseling session for myself when I was in front of my therapist, who really brought to light that I was judging my younger self way too harshly. I was walking in the light with which I had at the time. Right. And then the more you know, actually, this is true, I think, for most of us. We go to counseling, we have some insights, we have those aha moments. And then most people will say, oh, I wish I had done this years ago. And then they have the grief over not doing it years ago. Well, here you are now. And life, that's the challenge, is to live in this very present moment and to honor our dignity and value and worthiness as human beings, and then making sure you surround yourself with people who also can do that. But it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, grace and mercy to me is kind of the starting point, and I don't think you can you ever say, okay, I've completely forgiven myself, but you have to understand that, and at least when I went through it, is there's going to be times I don't think God gave us emotions for no reason. They're for a reason. So if sometimes if I feel guilty, I have to examine it and figure out if it's real. Is there stuff I've done that I need to apologize for? Sometimes the emotion of sadness is a good thing. Sometimes the emotion of joy is a good thing. If you're not experiencing some of this on a pretty regular basis, I think you're missing out. You're probably not living life to its fullest. At least, this is the philosophy of Clint. Welcome. By the way, my counseling's free. If you're really wanting to save some money and take the wrong turn, I used to own a website titled The Failure Avoidance Coach, because I couldn't be a life coach. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what not to do. Okay, so let's do this in the next few minutes we have, and I want to thank everybody that's chiming in. We've had 4 or 5 people that have chimed in and said they love the stuff we're talking about, Margaret, and people have talked about your book, Judy, and I want to thank all of you for chiming in. There's actually a link there to Judy's book if somebody wants to check it out, and links to all 3 of you are in the description too, so they can find out if somebody wants to follow up. So we talked about grace and mercy, and some of it, we've talked about why it's important. We've talked about some tips people can have. I want to give each of you the floor for a couple of things as we move through it, and the other 2 can jump in if they have questions. Advice to people about the journey, and you can focus in on the start, you can focus in on the big picture, you can focus in on habits. I don't really care which direction you take, but I want you each to have a moment where you can talk about the importance of being the authentic self, the journey, and why it's been good for you, or advice you would give. And then if Judy and if you 3 want to jump in, and Karen and Chastity each other, y'all can jump in. But at this point, whoever wants to go first is great. Clint's going to shut up. Ready, Karen? That's going to be the steal shot. When all 3.
We're all going to say it at the same time. How about that?
No. Go. So, Karen, why don't you start us off on what you want to say to people, wrapping this up about the authentic journey and authentic selves?
Yeah, I was thinking about a tool or a tip that I could leave people with. And so one of the things that I find is incredibly valuable is to get clear on the decisions that you're making, be it big or small. And so every decision can be boiled down to either a fear-based decision or a desire-based decision. And Chas talked about risk, right? And so what I say to my clients is, when you're trying to make a decision, the easiest thing to do is to say, what if there were no negative ramifications? You put yourself in a bubble, nobody's going to get upset, nothing negative is going to happen. What's your decision? What's your choice? And that's where your authenticity comes out. Now, a fear-based decision is easy because you stay comfortable. So it's like, I'm not going to go to school. I'm not going to put myself out dating. I'm going to stay in this comfortable place. So it feels comfortable, but it's very confining. A desire-based decision requires leaps of faith. A desire-based decision requires taking risk. It's scary, it's uncomfortable, and it almost always turns out so much better and leads you toward your authentic self. And so if you walk away with one thing, whether you're making a small decision or a big decision, think about, is it fear-based or desire-based? And if it's fear-based, ask yourself that question, well, what if there were no negative ramifications? That's how you get clear on what you really want, and that'll move you in the right direction. It's baby steps, but that's what coaching's all about.
I love that.
Thank you.
Next.
Well, I'm going to say this because we're all at different ages on this screen. And what comes up commonly in my counseling office is this mentality of, I had this happen to me in the past, or I made this decision in the past, and now in other words, most folks, I guess most of us, me included, will say, well, because this happened, then and then it just makes our vision very narrow, and we cannot see a better future. So I'm going to ask this question to listeners, that if up to now, whether you've been married 40 years and you just got a divorce, whether you are 85 years old, whether you are a teenager, whatever stage of life, if up to now is only the beginning, what's next? And allow yourself to have a vision of living the most beautiful essence of yourself in this world, because we need you. We need the real you. We need the authentic you. You have so much to give. Your life is valuable and one of dignity and worth, and the world needs you.
That's
wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just taking that in. I thought she was talking to me.
Yes. I was like this.
I know.
Oh, we're doing an interview.
Okay.
Right. Present. That was great.
Yeah.
My advice on the authentic journey. So my entire company is basically based around becoming fearlessly authentic and moving. So I always tell people for the first step, what are you scared of? What are you fearing? What is the biggest thing that could possibly happen? Write it all down, and then just like burn it or throw it away or put it down the toilet, because it doesn't really matter. So walk toward those fears, but write them down. You never know what's actually running around in your head until you write it down. So that's what I tell people, like, step one, what are you afraid of? And then in order to fear less, you have to figure out what you want. Like, what is that authentic thing that you want? How do you take your eggs? Don't worry about Joe over there and how he likes his eggs. How do you take your eggs? What do you actually want? Without anybody else's opinion, write down what you authentically want and what you want to do in your life and in your journey and where you're going, because you can't get there unless you know where you're going. And then step 3, design a plan to get there and take that first step to move. Like, the island might be way out there that you're going for, that person you want to become. But in order to get there, you have to fear less, go through it. You have to figure out where the island is, and you have to swim to that first buoy before you can take that deep breath to continue on, to get to that person you want to become. So step 1, fear less by writing it down and getting rid of it over and over and over. And step 2, write down what you want, because if you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. Step 3, make a plan. And the other really, really important thing I have done in my own life on like the authentic journey is I have a 30-year journal, because I started it when I was 30. So every single day I have a little blurb about what I do. Well, that same day, the following year, I write a blurb about where I am. And if it's like you're not moving in the direction you want to go, you can change it because you actually have data. Or if you feel like you're stuck, you actually have data to show like, no, I'm not really stuck. I'm actually a lot farther than I thought 1 year later. And it keeps you moving toward the goal that you want to have.
I love that.
Love
Actually, I'm on year 2 of a 5-year journal, and it has it all on one page. And so this year I'm doing it in pink ink. Last year I did it all in black ink, and probably next year I'll do it in blue or whatever. I think that's brilliant, but it's really cool because so many times we say, oh, well, what were we doing last year at this time?
Right.
I don't know, but it does. It raises that level of awareness, doesn't it, Chaz? And there you go, taking deep breaths of air, awareness.
Awareness. I know.
Awareness,
I
intentionality.
I'm just
like that.
I just use a pencil. So if I don't like what I did last year, I can just go back and erase it. That's not true. I was doing great things. Look at that. And there we go.
9 years of doing that will move you forward. I'm almost 40, so I write it down and I'm like, oh, I got to move.
Well,
there you go.
And I'll encourage everybody too. Sometimes we talked about some first steps. I think saying it out loud, I like what you said, writing it down, but saying something you're feeling out loud or saying something that scares you out loud to another human being that you've never said before, that's I'm telling you, it sounds crazy, but it feels like you've lost 30 pounds when you go, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm scared of. This is what I don't like about me. This is that. When you get it out, it just feels like, oh, that's a good start.
And you know what? So many people will say, me too, and then you have your connection.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Actually, what started the whole journey for me in 2018 was the phrase, obviously I went through a lot, but Garrett J. White said the most powerful person in the room is the one that has nothing to hide. And then he looked at us and he was like, so what is your biggest fear? What are you hiding? And we had to write it down and then say it out loud.
Wow. Love it.
Well, that sucks. We're not doing that here. This is not the group I signed up for. Hold on a second. We'll do that when we're not live. Dadgum. Okay, Karen, thank you very much. Karen, can you hear me? Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I want to recommend everybody, if you're in relationship struggles, maybe you're wanting to, you feel like you're initiating a divorce. Someone has told you that you're getting ready to go through a divorce and it's not your decision. Or if you're still married and you're thinking about it, but you go, I don't know if I want to give up on this relationship. Karen is a great place to start. She's a great coach. She asks you great questions that hurt and that suck. And, you will go, I don't like that question. Go to the next question. And if you're in a place, and it's not just, it doesn't have to be about relationships, but if you're in a place mentally and you're needing some help, there's life issues. If you're a counselor yourself and need somebody to help you, Judy is great. If you're in a relationship or stuck in life, Judy's a great place to go. She keeps plenty of Kleenex right by the couch. At least she used to. So I know she's changed how she's doing it a little bit. And let's see, I want to make sure we're saying.
I carry it in my backpack these days, seeing how I'm offering outdoor therapy.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret, by the way. And when we get through, we'll all kind of go through here and read some of these comments. And I should have been putting them on the screen, but I didn't bring my glasses. So to be honest, I'm having to do this to read them. And I'll say this, if you ever are wondering, I want to learn something about being healthier, but I don't want it to be a fad or a diet. And I want it to be something, discover things about myself along the way that's bigger than just the carbs, the proteins, and the fats. Reach out to Chastity and her group. She has several nutrition coaches that work with her in group formats. It is good stuff. I will tell you, though, part of it is sending them before pictures. And just like with Karen and Judy, they make you look at yourself and it sucks.
I've got to say something, Clint, because this is in chapter 5 of my book. At the beginning of each of the chapters, I pull in some famous quotes. And this one is by Carl Jung, which anybody that's taken general psych in college would know. This is from Jungian therapy. But here's what he said, which really goes along with it. It says, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's, fear is part of the human journey, but it will give you power, isn't it? I mean, won't it, Chaz, as you talked about, it will give you power. So, fear's there. It's going to be accompanying you. And just like my therapist said, they're like your little grandchildren. Make sure they're buckled up in the back seat. Don't let them be in the driver's seat of your life.
Very good.
I like that.
Ladies, we're going to end it with that. I want to thank you all three, and maybe we can come up with a different topic or find a good excuse. We'll make a good excuse to do this again down the road.
I would love that.
This is great. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you, Clint.
Bye.